everyone, welcome to the Boogie Mama Riffs and Reviews. This is my first ever review and I've chosen Led Zeppelin III. What a cool album. I'm not sure why I chose it. I know a little bit about it. Let's get into it. If you're a new viewer, welcome. If you've been with us about a week, that's how long we've been going, welcome back. So today, like I said, we're going to be reviewing Led Zeppelin III album, and I've put some of the pictures up at the start there. You can see this is the CD version, the gatefold. It's a replica of the original album. I'm not the sort of person who can say this is a first print or whatever. I know I did have the record of it. I gave it to someone when records went out of fashion and now they're back in fashion. It has this cool colour wheelie thing, turns like that. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so Led Zeppelin III, what do you guys think about it? Some of the Rolling Stone magazine and critics said Led Zeppelin has gone soft and that sort of thing. So I don't really want to touch on the things that have been talked about over and over. I just want to say a few things about it. I think it's a cool album, and I'm going to share a few things and maybe rate it out of 5 stars at the end. Led Zeppelin III obviously is Zeppelin's 3rd studio album, and they're an English rock band, for those of you who don't know that. And it was released in 5th of October 1970. It was recorded in 3 locations. Much of the work at Headley Grange is where they're famous for recording Led Zeppelin IV in, the old haunted mansion or whatever it was, a country house using the Rolling Stones mobile studio. And additional sessions were held at Island and Olympic Studios in London. As with prior albums, Jimmy Page was the producer of the album, with the mixing done by Andy Johns and Cherry Manning. The album showed the progression from straightforward rock, like we know in Led Zeppelin II. They went from progressive rock to straightforward rock in Zeppelin II, Heartbreaker, Whole of Love, that sort of thing. And they went into a more acoustic feel, and the reason for that is they went to, you might have seen at the start of the program, Bronra Cottage, not sure if I said that correctly, in Wales. And Robert Plant used to go there apparently on a vacation in his childhood, and after Zeppelin hit the ground running in late '68 and they toured and they had the first album out and they recorded Led Zeppelin II on the road, Rob Plant suggested to Jimmy Page that they should take some time out away from touring and go to Bronra Cottage. And this remote setting had no running water, apparently, I don't know what they were drinking, or electric power, hence the acoustic material, and that encouraged a slight change in musical direction. And the band had an emphasis on folksy things. I know Robert Plant mentioned once, not necessarily about Zeppelin III, but in general, I heard Robert Plant say in an interview that he just loves folksy type songs. So I guess Robert's voice started to get a little bit more refined, and his songwriting really tended to come to the foreground. And Jimmy Page started to experiment with alternative guitar tunings, like of course he did. If you're a musician out there or learning guitar or something, and you try and play one of Jimmy Page's songs, chances are you're having trouble learning it because he changes the tuning, or Jimmy Page might use 4 or 5 different guitars with different tunings and put it together. Packaging. We said this about the packaging before, that one of Jimmy Page's college friends from Kingston College, Zachron, a student at Kingston College, helped Jimmy Page do this. And if you've ever seen Jimmy Page's house, the thing looks like a golden museum. So Page was a college art student as well as a guitarist. So you can see Jimmy Page's friend having influence on this album cover. And you also notice that how big the name Led Zeppelin is written on here. Huge. That was the name, Led Zeppelin. It could sell. Like Peter Grant said, you could put Led Zeppelin's latest CD out in a brown paper bag and it'd still sell. But you notice on the 4th album, when they had trouble with people saying it was all hype, it was their name that sold it, Well, they didn't even have their name on their Led Zeppelin 4th album. So this one they went from having their big Led Zeppelin title, Led Zeppelin name on it, to the next album where they didn't have any their name on it whatsoever in any of the artwork. And you'll see here that this is a replica of the album, and it's got some track listing now. Immigrant Song. Most people know Immigrant Song. If you've ever been to a sporting match, they play Immigrant Song. Very overplayed, but awesome track. It was written about the Vikings' invasions of England, and inspired by a short tour they have at Iceland in 1970. So that's where they get the midnight sun and the come from land of the ice and snow, etc. The next song is Friends. I like Friends. I like how it breaks it up. You've got that rock song, comes in with Immigrant Song to the... Then we go into Friends. Apparently Jimmy Page, from memory, in an interview in one magazine I read that Jimmy Page actually had a fight with his wife, or he was having some sort of disagreement with his girlfriend at the time, or wife, and he just picked up his guitar after they had a fight and they were mad, and he started playing that Friends riff. And Jimmy Page said that he played a harmony acoustic, which you've probably seen pictures of, and it's tuned to a different C tuning, but it's not a typical C tuning, is what Jimmy Page said. He made it up. And the song also includes a string section, which Jonesy, or John Paul Jones, wrote on that. That's when they really started to branch out in this album, where you see in later years, 1994 and 5, Page and Plant, when they brought in the orchestra and they redid Friends, and that was a great version. But I think it's amazing. Some of my friends have YouTube channels, and I write in the comments that it's amazing how it only took an entire orchestra to replace Jonesy. So the next song is Since I've Been Loving You. So it's one of the first songs that most people recognise when they play live, other than Stairway to Heaven, and it really did take the place of I Can't Quit You Babe. If you remember that song, I Can't Quit You Babe, Willie Dixon song from the first album, they used to play that live. When Since I've Been Loving You came out, they started to play that song. And really, if you ever tried to play the song properly, I used to play it years ago, and my own version, of course, but if you ever try to play these songs correctly, Pagey, you just realise what a genius Pagey was. And I remember hearing a story by the engineer, I think it was, the engineer for that album was Terry Manning, I think. The recording or the mixer of the album was Terry Manning, and he said that they already recorded Since I've Been Loving You, but they didn't have a lead solo for it. So they got Pagey to come in and do his solo overdub, but by then they were about to tour again, and Pagey didn't have a guitar, and there was apparently a few guitars in the studio. So it has this, Jimmy Page borrowed someone's guitar, played that Since I've Been Loving You solo, first take, on someone else's guitar, and if you ever hear that solo, it just shows you how amazing Jimmy Page is. Song, Out on the Tiles, probably my most favourite song on the album, Out on the Tiles. And presumably it was written by John Bonham. How often does that happen, that a drummer writes the song? And you hear in subsequent times when they play Black Dog live, they do the introduction to Out on the Tiles, that and I love it when they actually do the riff live of Out on the Tiles as well. They actually do the other bit, the verse part. Love that bit, anyway. Side 2. So in the olden days when Pagey was producing albums, you go over to side 2, and the first song on it is Gallows Pile. And that's an updated arrangement from traditional folk song called The Maid Freed from the Gallows. It was one of those ones where Zeppelin basically reinvented a song and presented it on the album as such. And Page played a variety of electric guitars on that, banjos, you can hear all sorts of things. Jonesy's playing mandolin, bass, I'm not sure if it's double bass on there, sounds a little bit like a double bass, but I love that song Gallows Pile. This is where most people say that Led Zeppelin really turned a sharp left corner. where the first side of the album's a little bit heavy, and then the second side they went very acoustic. Tangerine, probably one of my most favourite songs on Zepp 3. I'm saying Out in the Tiles, Tangerine, Celebration Day, and let's throw Gallows Pole in there as well. Tangerine was written in 1968 by Jimmy Page when he was in the Yardbirds, and while they were still together. And a lot of these songs, Dazed Confused, Tangerine, Train Kept A-Rolling, these were all songs that Jimmy was working on in the Yardbirds before the new Yardbirds became Led Zeppelin. The next song is That's the Way. Now that's a folksy song, that one. You want to look up folk song in the dictionary? That's the Way. And you'll see that Jimmy Page is using a different tuning there again. And the story was that when they went, Page and Plant went to this Bronra cottage, they used to actually go on walks, and you probably see different footage of it where Jimmy Page is wearing gumboots and a hat and he looks like a fisherman. And apparently this song, That's the Way, was inspired on one of those walks through the woods, and he talks about dirty water, fish laying in the dirty water dying and things of that nature. So That's the Way really is a great song too. And there's 2 tracks left on the album. Bronra Stomp. I'm not sure how you pronounce it exactly, forgive me if it's wrong. Bronra Stomp. Not to be mixed up with Bronra, which I played at the start of this video, which was released later on Physical Graffiti. And Bronra Stomp actually started out called Jennings Farm Blues, and it was an electric number. He wasn't, and there's a part in the drums, if you listen to Jennings Farm Blues, where the drums are almost catching up with the timing of the song, but it's all in time because it's the best drummer in the world, John Bonham. And Bronra Stomp, I personally think that Jennings Farm Blues could have maybe, in my humble opinion, been a better alternative to put on the album rather than the acoustic take of Bronra Stomp. I just think Jennings Farm Blues maybe would have taken that edge off the acousticality, if that's a word, of the album, and the softness of it. But I like both versions, but if I was going to pick one of the 2 versions, it would be Jennings Farm Blues. And finally, the last track on this awesome album is Hats Off to Roy Harper. And unfortunately, this song gets bagged out by people. I like it. I play the guitar myself. I like the song. Hats Off to Roy Harper. That Led Zeppelin were friends with Roy Harper. It was just a nod to him. And it was actually a song by Booker White from a song called Shake 'Em On Down, and you can hear Robert Plant having this vibrato effect on his voice. And finally, there was some unreleased material on this album, which one of the points I wanted to make on this video was the amount of ideas Page and Plant made up in this Bronra cottage and then presented it to Jonesy and Bonham. It's just amazing. There's apparently here, Page said that there was a group of 16 tracks they had to choose from for this album. And I am not one to disagree with Jimmy Page. If he decided on these songs, Page knows best. So I'm not going to argue with it, but I'm just saying that there were some cool songs they left off, like Poor Tom, for example. But I think personally the reason why that might not have fit in to Zeppelin III is because it was very similar to Bronra Stomp. The kick on the bass drum, Bronra Stomp were maybe similar. Also, Bronra, as I said, that was released on Physical Graffiti. But one of my favourite songs of all time, my number 1 favourite Zeppelin song, is Hey Hey, What Can I Do? Love that song. And that was actually the B-side for the single Immigrant Song. And I honestly think if they had thrown in Hey Hey, What Can I Do? And the other one I was saying, Jennings Farm Blues, that album maybe would have been more balanced, but like I said, we got to trust Pagey. And also, apparently, in the later releases of Coda, the Super Deluxe versions or Deluxe versions, they had St. Tristan's Sword, which is also one of my favourites, an instrumental. And I'm going to finish up now. If I was going to rate Led Zeppelin III out of 5 stars, I hate to rate it. I hate to rate albums, but I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 stars. If they had added Hey, What Can I Do? And Jennings Farm Blues, it would have been 5 stars. So thank you for watching the program today. This is Boogie Mama Reads and Reviews. I'll see you next time.